City. It's Pojo, and today we're popping a bottle of 2008 Saint Chamant champagne in celebration of the first ever episode of Model City, the podcast. Ooh. Let's get started. Hello, you guys, and welcome to Model City, the podcast. It's your girl, Pojo. I'm your host, and I'm so excited to be here with you today, and thank you for lending your ears for at least a small period of time. I hope you enjoyed our little champagne moment. We're celebrating because this starts the beginning of a very exciting journey together. Right now, you're either one of two people. You're looking at me, you know who I am, and you know what Model City is, or you're somebody that has never even heard of the title Model City, and it may or may not provoke some emotion, and you're confused. If you're one of those people, let me tell you a little story. We're going to start off and, get into things by giving you a little backstory on who I am, why I'm here, what Model City even is, and why Model City should, and what that really means to me. And hopefully you can find some value in the content we're making, and I hope these conversations mean something to you. So with that being said, get your glass up, let's go, let's have a little soiree. My name's Phoebe, but the internet calls me Pojo, so you can go in any direction you want. You can call me Pojo, Phoebe, that girl over there with the mic, the freak that's 6'2", like it's fine. Whatever you want to call me, you can call me that. My pronouns are she, her. I think some people think that, something shifted when I took up that nickname, but it came from middle school and it stuck. So you can call me whatever you want. But I'll be a familiar face here, and I thought I'd give you a little backstory on how I started modeling. I think it's pretty obvious hosting a podcast called Model City that I've modeled or in the past or currently. I sometimes struggle with the title of being a model in the present, but I'll explain that in my journey. So let's go back a little bit. Currently, I'm 21, almost turning 22 in June, but I started this whole journey when I was 11 years old. Oh yes, 10 years ago. It feels really weird saying that, but a decade ago, this is where it all began. So first, I should say, I grew up in New Jersey. Shout out 070. Love you guys. Mapso, you know the vibes. I grew up in a small town, the suburbs, with a wonderful family, my two parents, my sister, my dogs. And I grew up a pretty simple, basic upbringing. My childhood was really peaceful. I had great friends in school. I did the whole public school thing. And I loved my life, played soccer, all that stuff. I went into middle school being just like any other young girl, insecure, a little scrawny. I was probably taller than the average. I was 5'10" going into middle school, which is definitely a weird thing to say out loud, but all I know is being tall. I've always been the taller kid, and so that kind of became part of my personal identity. And in that, I definitely was insecure around peers, but that was pretty much the thing that peeks out to me when I think about things that provoke some emotion or provoke something, a little insecurity in me. So that's what I think of when I think of middle school. Well, when I think of middle school, I also think of my 7th grade year. My family friend reached out to my mom and told her that she was going to her Take Your Child to Work day at her job. She was the editor at Glamour magazine, which is a pretty big deal in the publishing world. She worked at Condé Nast, which is a huge publishing company. If you know anything about Condé Nast, you know they carry Vogue, Teen Vogue, GQ, Glamour. They had every cool magazine coming out of New York at Condé's. So she asked my mom if I would want to go with her to Take Your Child to Work day because her daughter was sick. And that's a pretty random thing. Some people would be like, that's a weird coincidence, but my fake dream job in middle school was being a graphic designer. I don't think it was public knowledge, but I guess my family friend knew. And my other fake dream job was being an NCIS agent. So it was which way are we gonna go? Maybe hanging out with a bunch of agents isn't really necessarily the most reasonable thing. So nonetheless, I ended up going to this Take Your Child to Work day. My mom dressed me, put me in a blouse. I was a little shook, didn't really know how to act. I was sticking to my Aeropostale, my Delias, full circle. And it was a different vibe for me. But I was ready, and I had a lot of fun. The whole thing was really cool. We went into the city. I got to hang out with all these cool people that run all these magazines. They had so many cool events lined up for all the kids. So we were all really busy throughout the day. So that was what I remember from that day. It was really fun. The other thing I recall is when it was lunchtime, I went to the cafeteria with a family friend and I was picking up food. I remember getting mac and cheese and probably like a lemonade or something. And this woman comes up to me and she asks me like, "Hi, are you a model?" And we're talking about scrawny, prepubescent Pojo, confused, not identifying with who I am in a personal way, more so in an insecure way. When someone comes up to you and asks you, "Are you a model?" there's so much that comes with that. But at that time in my life, I was a big consumer of media in the sense of magazines and commercials and billboards, right? Like those were what the primary forms of model content or media I was used to. Instagram was just taking off. So I wasn't really active there. I didn't follow people there. I didn't really have a preconceived notion of what being a model meant other than what I read in magazines. And so when this woman asked me that, I was like, "Oh, no, I'm not a model." She's like, "Oh, well, you're really beautiful. I think you should be. Like, are you here with somebody?" Because I was obviously 11-year-old, like eating mac and cheese, a little extra. So she reaches out to my family friend. She ends up getting in contact with her that day. And she tells me that she works for Teen Vogue and they're looking to work with me. This is also, I would like to mention, not a conventional scouting story. Some people are like, "How'd you get scouted?" "I got scouted in a mall. Someone ran up to me on the street." Like, I was eating mac and cheese at a cafeteria and I was 11. And to me, I look back and I do recognize how absurd that is, you know? Like, the odds of that happening are slim to none. And so I take it as the craziest game of chance and one of the biggest blessings in my life. And so what happened after that day was quite interesting. The woman who got in touch with a family friend got in touch with my parents, which eventually led 2 years later to me signing to an agency in New York. That agency was one that was recommended by this woman who worked at Teen Vogue. And before I knew it, I was signed in the city. And my first job ever as a model was a page spread in Teen Vogue with my little name written in it and my little age, 13-year-old Phoebe wears Friend and Company. I do recall the brand. It was a really weird experience going from reading that magazine religiously, and I think a lot of people do feel this way. Like, that was seriously, before, like, you know, the social media world we're in now, that's what middle school was. It was like having the same subscriptions as your friends and reading the same magazines and, "Oh my God, did you see that page spread?" or "Did you see this?" And it became my identity in my circle and in my world very, very quickly. I remember the day it came out, my life changed for sure. I didn't tell anybody except for my close friends, and things changed forever, seriously. And I was in 8th grade. So middle school wraps up, I'm off to high school, and my career really starts to begin. Pretty much my niche in fashion became very clear. I was so young that I was perfect for commercial work. For those that don't know what that really means, it's not necessarily always commercials, but it's also like catalog clients and things like that. They're a little bit less abrasive, less high fashion, more digestible, especially at that age. And I think it was amazing. My team that worked with me, I love them forever because they really took care of me and put me in age-appropriate spaces. And with teams of people that were amazing and adults that made me feel confident. And, you know, growing up in that and quickly becoming so comfortable being around so many adults on set and having real adult conversations and not, you know, being taken care of course, like protected, which is not always the case, and we'll get into that in this podcast, but that was a really unique experience for me, and I definitely didn't take it for granted. It was a really good escape in a lot of ways, and it took me out of my comfort zone. You know, I'd miss a lot of school. High school, I missed a lot of school, and I was living kind of a double life. I would do my public school thing, and then I'd go into castings or go to a show or go to whatever. My first clients, I remember being Delia's, like one of my favorite clients, one for the culture. I remember going into the mall and seeing my face on a poster, like in their store. I used to shop at that store. I'd get my Black Eyed Peas, like graphic tees and stuff like that. It was surreal, and it kind of takes you out of body because it doesn't feel like you're looking at yourself when you're looking at those things. So I had a really unique experience with that, and my high school treatment was very nice because of it. So all of those privileges I have to acknowledge and say I'm so grateful for. So anywho, that's like freshman year, sophomore, junior year. I turned 16 and my agents put me up for New York Fashion Week, which is a pretty big deal. If you guys have done shows, though, you know what I'm saying. It's the energy that goes into shows that makes it a big deal. You can glamorize it if you want. That's cool. But every model knows what Fashion Week brings. It brings skinny jeans, black heels, tears, and your portfolio, and a ton of comp cards. And you're running around New York or whatever city. If you do the circuit, that's great. I only did New York City for Fashion Week. There's several Fashion Weeks around the world. And I made such close friends during that time. So many people from my agency, models I'd meet at castings, like random things like that. We became like kind of a group, and especially the younger girls. Like I remember being a teenager growing up in it, and it's hard to identify with these older girls that you're working with, you know? Like I had girls on set with me for so many jobs that were Victoria's Secret models, and I was like 14. You know, it's not relatable. And I know also with my background, being so into sports and stuff, I was never really looking at my career in a way where it's like, that could be me. It's like, no, that's them. Like I felt very separate from that experience due to how I got into it. But I do remember Fashion Week being one of the most hectic experiences of my life. I wouldn't trade it for anything. I did about 4 seasons, I think, 5 maybe. But it's a lot of energy, and you're running around to castings for about a week straight, or maybe even 2 weeks straight before shows, and it's a lot. But you get close with the girls you're with, or whoever you're with. And I was mostly with other girls who were doing the same thing as me. Some of them had their parents there, some didn't, but overall we had each other, and it made a big, big difference. And at this time, you may be wondering, where is this all going? At this time, I started an Instagram account called models.that.eat. It was a food account. It was a joke. And now it's not, but it started as a playful food account that came from me and my friends talking about how people would always come up to us and say, oh, you're a model? Like, do you eat? Like, oh, like you need a burger? Like, so what do you do? Like, I don't know, like models need to eat. It's like, guys, what is all the talk about the food we eat? Like, I was coming from a background of eating a lot, you know, playing sports, being used to food as fuel, with a few microaggressions in there from agents time to time. I've had some people give me a fair share of, you know, all right, maybe these people are thinking about what I'm eating, but I didn't really understand why people did it. So as a joke, I thought as a rebellious act, I would post photos of all the food my model friends and I would eat in between castings and shows. And it kind of became a thing. I just started posting it probably like 3 or 4 times a week. Nothing super crazy, but I had fun doing it, so I made a point to do it. And I just remember the feedback being extremely positive, but also borderline alarming at times. Now, when I started it, obviously it was a joke, and other models really liked it. I found that a lot of models thought it was like fun and like, oh my gosh, like you ate at that restaurant, I want to eat there. Or, oh my God, I was there the other day between the cast. Like it felt very organic, and my friends at home would follow it too. Like it was a really chill vibe. And then I started getting a lot of DMs that were different. One of which I remember was from a model, and she reached out to me and she told me, I found your account and I want to thank you for making that Models That Eat page because it inspired me to go into eating disorder recovery. And it also inspired me to make my own account. And I remember hearing that and I was like a little bit confused. It's like, oh, that's nice. I'm glad. I was glad it, did something positive, but I thought she didn't, it seemed like she didn't realize it wasn't an eating disorder recovery account. And I was like, oh, I don't have an eating disorder. Like, I just post the food that I like to eat. And I guess at that moment, it kind of clicked that this was not just a playful pizza on the feed with my friend or this terrible ramen I made. This is actually a lot deeper than that. And the reason why people are looking at it from a gaze that is shifted is because it is a lot deeper than what I intended it for it to be. And when you're that young and naive and, at the age where a lot of these like the repercussions of body image pressure and food start to play a part in your life, you realize that it's going to impact people differently. And it was kind of hard for me to understand how people got in situations even like that. Like I didn't know anything about eating disorders, like I knew nothing about other people's relationships with food. And what I realized very quickly was that I didn't know a lot about my friends' relationships with food, those people I was actually posting and eating with. And so I became very intrinsic. I kept posting and kept doing it, but I was getting like a little bit more observant of the people around me and my friends. And with that, I started to see things that I didn't see before. You know, when I was just focused on my career, I started to see things that were happening to my friends and to the people around me and in the agencies or at the castings that had repercussions and that affected the people around me and the pressure they felt. Like friends that told me, oh, that meal I had with you was actually like my binge eating day. Like I hadn't eaten in a week. Or, oh, I really like the account, but like I don't think I could like eat lunch today. Like I have to like skip it for a casting. Or, the things that like do affect you if you hear it, but more because you didn't understand that it existed before. So I really started to think about the way that I was being perceived in the industry. Like, wow, people could think that this is an eating disorder recovery account, but what does it actually even mean? Like, is that positive? And is that something that I would like to provide people with, like a space where they feel safe to eat? And does it actually even have to be that for it to have the same effect? Like these are the things I started to unravel. A lot of thoughts came to the surface. And beyond all of those intrinsic thoughts, I really started to look at myself a little bit differently. And this is where it got a little hard. I started to look back and how I got into the industry. And I realized at the time I was an 11-year-old prepubescent girl, tall, scrawny, vulnerable, and impressionable. And when the modeling industry asked me to be a part of it, I saw it as an opportunity to have fun and enjoy myself and maybe make some money, but most of all, it just seemed interesting. And in truth, it was way more about the way I looked and what that meant for the industry and how they could benefit from it than it did about the opportunities I could get or how fun it would be. Like, sure, if you think it's fun, then it'll be fun, but it really does play a part in how you interpret it. And so I really started to see what my career started as. And it started as people seeing me as a good person to help them make money. And that's what fashion is. Fashion is finding people that portray clothes in a way that will help with sales. It's all capitalism. I mean, I'm not here to say the fashion industry is evil, but I'm just here to say like it is what it is. When it's a business, it's a business. So understanding that I was a part of a business that doesn't necessarily take models seriously, a business that doesn't necessarily care if models are hurting or eating or drinking or doing drugs or working out too much or anything. Because why would it? The industry benefits off of them being complacent or following the rules or doing the things they think they need to stay a part of it. And because I never had to do those things, it shifted my perception of it. And it shifted the way I moved through the world and interpreted other people's pain because I didn't see it. I didn't even see it. So with that, it made me really question, what does my presence in the media do for other people? How does it affect other people? Does someone seeing me in that page spread in Teen Vogue do something positive or negative? And maybe it's not always positive or negative. Maybe it's not so blanket statement, right? Maybe it's in the gray. Maybe it's a little bit of everything. But it really made me see the industry differently and in a way that once it clicks, it's really hard to unsee it that way. It's really hard to see it as this is my body and I am taking part in other brands' visions of what will sell and what looks good to them or what aesthetically makes sense. And am I willing to be a part of those narratives? And that's a conscious decision that models don't always make. And I don't blame them, right? When you get put in an industry where you're making this much money and trust me when I tell you, I was not making what the average 14-year-old was making at that age. Like, it's absurd. My perception of life was different. I was given access to something that was so inaccessible. And that's how the glamorization of modeling has become now, especially with social media, especially with celebrities, especially with all this, because the lifestyle is turned into a commodity that if you have it, you're happy or you're successful or you're rich or you're beautiful or you're content. And it truly is this warped thing. Anyways, for me, the other side, though, of that questioning around my identity in fashion and in the media was questioning why I was there. Was I actually making a negative impact on the space and doing all these things? Or Was I simply making space for me as a insecure 11-year-old who had never felt like she identified with models in the industry, even though I was the perfect bait to be a part of it. You know, tall, naturally very thin. I've always struggled with putting on weight, even when I really, really, really need to. And I was very much so parallel to them in a way that I never realized. And I think that was the separation there in middle school, and the insecurity around boys, the insecurity around being taller than everybody that I dated, the insecurity around not fitting in a way that was considered socially acceptable. And I don't think other people would look at me and say that. I really didn't struggle with bullying to the extent that a lot of people do. But I will say that I struggled with self-identity more than anything. And so what did it really mean to build an identity around how people perceived me and dressed me when I was 14? Those are the things that I think about now that make me really question my work and what I do here with Model City and the media I intend to make, because I think those are narratives that really change the way you see the models that you look at. And we're going to get into that in a little bit. But I just wanted to touch on all those angles because I do think if you listen to my life story and you heard all that you've heard, and you just heard, I got signed at 13 and I started modeling in New York City alone and I made all these friends and I did all these campaigns and I did this, it gets lost. It gets lost in what feels good and what looks good, right? Or not ironic at all, but like it really gets lost in the modeling sauce. That was a serious conversation with a very casual ending. But all right, once I saw what was going on and how deep the issues really were when it comes to body image and food and our perceptions of it and our perceptions of ourselves in modeling and how it affects everybody based off their jobs, I couldn't unsee it. And so the way that I started interpreting work was kind of hard for me. It really was. I remember I ended up leaving my agency when I was 18. I was supposed to go to Paris and sign there. I had a falling out with the agency in Paris that street scouted me, which I would love to tell in a future episode. Let me know if you're interested. And I was frustrated. I felt like I hit a dead end. I was like, what is going on? I feel like I don't know who I am anymore. I'm not willing to do certain jobs. I feel insecure at castings, but in a way where it's like I don't feel fulfilled. And it wasn't what it used to be. It wasn't this naive, fun, carefree thing that it was when I was in high school and gallivanting around the city and shopping wherever I want and doing whatever I want because it was my money and I could do whatever I needed. And so I decided to take the plunge and start a YouTube channel, which was Models That Eat on YouTube. It was a facet of the Instagram account. But what quickly started to develop was a space where I interviewed my friends over food, and we talk about their relationships with food. We talk about the way that they see the industry, and it was finally like I was making up for lost time, like lost personal conversations around things that friends should be able to talk about and find comfort in. And because of our jobs, we really weren't vocal about it. And honestly, who could blame us? The industry doesn't want you to talk about stuff like that. And not to make the industry this like weird, daunting thing, but like when I say the industry, I mean clients don't want to hear models complain about how they're being treated on set. Agents don't want to hear models complain about their agent telling them to lose weight or telling them to lose weight based off inches in their body or telling them their skin's bad or whatever it is, or telling them they need to grow an inch. Like, I see, these are the things, you guys, we could go for days about the things that affect people, but all of these little things that friends should be there for each other with, like we just had normalized not speaking about it. And what I realized was deeper than that, it was affecting everybody that looks at us on a daily basis. And when you're a model, a lot of eyes are on you, whether or not you know it, right? Like, I don't know how many people saw my Macy's catalog when I was 15, but hey, you just never know. And it could be 100 people, 1,000 people, 1,000,000 people. I'm sure millions of people have seen my face without knowing. I'm sure some people watching this now have seen my face without even knowing, because maybe I look different. Maybe it wasn't that meaningful, but whatever. Look, I'm not here to question the media I'm a part of. I'm here to tell you, though, these conversations that I want to have, especially here, are things that I think need to live on the internet for not only me and my mental clarity and my sanity and my friend's sanity, or just for the gratification of speaking about it, but deeper than that, I just hope it builds a stronger and more just culture around modeling, fashion, food, and what this space does to people and how it affects them subconsciously, consciously, in the direct messaging, in the indirect messaging, all the things that all in all add up to how we see ourselves and how we move through the world. So that's that. Now, this is the segment of the show where I want to show you guys some crazy stats from my Instagram. You're like, what are you even talking about? I really wanted to figure out how could I use my leverage in this industry to change people's lives in a positive way rather than a potentially negative way, which the body image standards and beauty standards that come from the modeling space, the way that they affect people, I don't think is inherently good. I wanted to find a way to use this access I have to this space and the people I know to do something really positive. And a lot of that starts with the media we consume. So I took to Instagram and I wanted to ask people just a few questions about models and media and how they saw it. I got thousands of people giving me feedback on their perception of models and media. So this is what we got. Do you follow models on social media? 84% of people said yes. 16% said no. Do the models you follow post videos of themselves talking? 55% said yes. 45% said no. Do you follow models because of their looks or their words? 76% said looks. 24% said words. Do these models and their content make you feel entertained? 63% said yes. 37% said no. Do these models and their content make you feel secure in yourself? 33% said yes. 67% said no. Do these models and their content bring something valuable to your life? 39% said yes, and 61% said no. I also asked people, what they wish models would talk about more on social media, which I will absolutely take into account as we continue the podcast. But the last question I asked, and this one is my favorite question of all time, do models eat? Do they? 86% said yes, but 14% of people that follow, even me, someone that talks about food and fashion and these things, 14% said no. And the reason I do this podcast and why I want to start it is for the 14%. I think there's something to be said about the detachment we have from models and their identities because it's so surface, the 60-something percentile of people that watch or follow them for their looks, or the 70% or whatever. These percentiles are interesting to me, and more than looking at it as like devastating data, I don't, because it's such a reflection of what the industry has created and perpetuated. And social media doesn't do any justice to what people really want or need. Like if 70% of us or 60%, whatever it is, if that many people are following models, but 60% of those people also are insecure because of them, what does that mean about what we're doing to ourselves with the media we consume? Like, to me, that is so deeply traumatizing and absurd. And it's not to say models owe anybody anything with the content they put out. You have to realize this is a career path that involves them posting in a certain way to attract clients. And some of these people are paycheck to paycheck, depending on rent. These are people just like anyone, right? These are people that are trying to make a living. They don't owe us anything, but in truth, we owe it to ourselves to consume something that is good for us, good for our brains, make a decision around following someone. It's like, if you have to unfollow somebody because they're not good for your mental health, like, that's self-care. And I say that with all the confidence in the world, and with the confidence that if you think I'm someone you shouldn't follow, that you'll unfollow me too. It's just something that needs to be talked about a little bit more in a more analytical way and not so emotional, because I think some people detach from the fact that it's a damaging narrative that's being perpetuated when we just consume mindlessly and when we follow people mindlessly. So, what is Models That Eat? What is Models That Eat the podcast? What's the point of me doing this work? My goal with this show is to finally give models a space to speak openly and freely about everything. I guess my point with this whole podcast is to give models that you see on billboards, in magazines, on runway shows, or whatever. I want to give those people a space to talk about everything, not just fashion, but body image, food, eating disorders, the hard shit to talk about, sexuality, like everything, because like that's where you start to understand who these people are that you're looking at. And when you can actually hear them talk about what's important to them, or just humanize them in the sense that you're listening to what they have to say, it breaks that wall down and it pulls the veil off this industry that has made people feel so insecure for so long. And when I tell you people, I mean the models that are people too. All models are people. PSA to the 14% that think they don't eat. We all eat. We all eat, and we have to eat. Some might have a complicated relationship with food, for sure, but talking about it is how we actually can relate to each other and step forward into health. And I think that gap between mental health and fashion is causing a huge issue. It's the reason why this industry is unsustainable for so many, and so many people leave in such a short period of time and can't sustain the repercussions of that. Like, we need to work together on that. And I don't think everyone's going to have the same interpretation of this platform, but I want you to decide for yourself what you gain from this. And I know it's going to take time to build that, but I just hope that if you're watching this, you can see my angle and why I value this media so much, and why I feel so inclined to speak to these people, and why models talking is really valuable for society and for social media and just for everybody in pop culture. It finally is going to change the narrative, and I want to continue to do that, and that's what my goal is with my work. Before I wrap this all up, I want to first say shout out to all of the grammar hawks. I know I'm going to get this comment. I chose the title and name Models That Eat for a reason. I've gotten the comments, I've gotten the DMs. Hey, I just wanted to let you know that it's models who eat. I know. You know, my friends gave me that when I was like 16 and I started the page. Like, that's not, you know, I'm going to say proper English. I feel like that's not even proper English. You know what? Whatever. Point is, I know it's not models that eat. Like, that's not what you should say. You should say models who eat. But with what we're working through over here, with the objectification of models, don't you think we have some work to do before we could call it models who eat? That 14% is screaming at me still. I'm just saying, guys, I think a lot of people don't understand what I'm getting at. So I just wanted to clarify that ahead of time. You can think it's stupid. I think it's stupid. But in truth, like, hey, that's the brand. Get with it, or I was going to say get packing, but I'd love for you to say. I mean, don't leave. It's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to have so many cool people coming on the show. To me, the idea of eating together is such a vulnerable and important thing, such a meaningful space. It's one of my favorite things to do with my friends. You know, I love going to dinner. I love going for lunch or grabbing a smoothie. Like, those things like mean a lot to me. And I think the reason it means so much to me in this industry is because how truly stripping it is of all the layers of conditioning we have. And when you're finally doing something for yourself, something as simple as eating, you're removing that pressure and you're letting go and you're surrendering to you being human. It's one of the only things that we all have in common is food. We're stuck with it. Whether your relationship is good or bad, or something you're working on, or something you're not proud of, it doesn't matter because it brings us together. And I just want to continue to do that with this show. So I'm going to leave you with this question. Will you eat with us? There's a seat at the table. There's a glass of champagne. Thank you for listening. If you got this far, thank you. I appreciate it. And I hope you stick around. I'm going to be posting every Monday, 1 episode per week. We'll be having seasons, so we might take a couple week breaks. But my point with that is to sustain this conversation long term, and I want to make sure you know you have somewhere safe and fun to be on a Monday night, the night we need it most, right? And if you want to follow me and keep track of what's going on, I think one of the best ways to do that is to follow us on Instagram, Models That Eat. So it's at models.that.eat. Yes, I kept the handle for all these years. My personal Instagram's at Pojo. And you can follow us on YouTube. We're just Models That Eat on YouTube. That's where we'll be posting the video version of this podcast. There's also the audible version on all streaming platforms. But I hope you join us. I want to thank you for being here. I feel like I'm sweating. I just feel like I'm in this like situation where I'm like, I just got really vulnerable for an hour, but I'm excited. And I think this is an exercise for me, and it's going to be an exercise for my friends that take part in this. And I'm grateful for your time and energy. And I hope you eat something great today, and I hope you stick around. So with that being said, it's your girl Pojo signing out. And now it's time for me to get really drunk. So have a great day. Bye.